Here's a chart. I've always used this in all the lectures from 2007 on. I think it's a nice chart that demonstrates glycemic index. There's a couple different ways to measure how food affects the individual. This is specifically on carbohydrates. Joel Furlman has a nice way that Whole Foods Market measures their food, and they have displays on the Andy and Mandy score. Excellent. I just like this. It's a nice explanation for, it's a nice pictorial on how food gets digested. So this is time, and this is the amount of sugar in your bloodstream. If you have food that's chewy, Mediterranean diet, food that's chewy, grains that you have to work with and break down, they get released into the bloodstream nice and slow over the course of 1 to 2 hours, still releasing because they're still digesting, the fiber's still there, and then it returns back to normal, right? When you have something like Red Bull or processed food, this is white bread, but in effect, if you ever look at those darker breads that are just molasses stained, same thing. You have flour, it's a wheat germ that's pulverized, you take off the good stuff, you throw in the bad stuff, and you have that sits on your shelves for years. I'll see if I can put a picture of the McDonald's bag that I have from 2011, I think it is. Still alive, it's still in my garage hanging, but hasn't changed. Anyway, this is bad food. It gets released into the bloodstream immediately within 30 minutes, and it gets you super high. And when the sugar gets into the bloodstream, the so-called high glycemic index, when it gets in there super high real fast, it'll usually plummet because the body says, wait, too much sugar right now, I'm going to make a ton of insulin. Insulin, again, if you remember from a couple of slides back, if this is the milieu of the bloodstream, when you have a whole bunch of sugar suddenly in the bloodstream, you'll have the pancreas make a whole bunch of insulin keys. And the insulin keys take the sugar, open the lock in the cell wall, and allow the sugar to get into the cell. But if there's way too much sugar, well, certainly the pancreas can make a whole bunch of insulin, but the cells don't like all this insulin and sugar around, so they decrease the amount of locks. And if you go from 12 locks down to 1 lock, no matter how many insulin keys there are, you'll only be able to open 1 door at a time. And you'll have this high amount of sugar get even higher and last longer. The longer you wait, the worse your diet. And then what happens is, because the insulin's so good, it'll shut down the amount of sugar that's flowing around the bloodstream because that's not healthy, and it'll put it below normal, and then suddenly it'll crash. This is where my high school kids kind of fall asleep in the period right after lunchtime. Everybody crashes or gets sleepy or yawns about 2 o'clock. And then what happens here is you get irritable and you hunt for more of this junk. And you pop up here again. So you can see it's a cycle that a lot of food companies know you'll go to over and over again. And then you'll certainly buy their food and keep them happy, but you'll also cause insulin resistance, prediabetes, and then diabetes, and then all the other diseases that go with that: stroke, heart attack, cancer.